Today I'm going to explain every single piece of JSON completely. And before we start, I want you to know you don't need any prior programming background to understand most of these things I'm going to explain. This is something that I believe that you can pick up on a random. This is something I believe that you can pick up on a random day, anytime basically. If you're watching this for the first time, this is the day 31 of the 60-day series where I break down the 5 layers of AI, starting from prompt engineering, AI automation, MCPs, APIs, AI agents, even to building agentic AI systems. I believe you can look beyond the hype of AI and learn how to use it. Not only that, but you could even make money by building for businesses and companies as well. And that's what I do. You can do the same if I show you every single process I currently use to do that. And how I do that is I put together every single thing I want to talk about in a resource guide, so I get to cover every core part of what you need to know on each day. So well, let's dive right into today's work part. So if you're not familiar with what a JSON is, this is what a JSON looks like. So let's dive right into today's work part. If you're not familiar with what JSON is, this is what JSON looks like. So what you can see there is a plain text format that is used for. You can see JSON as a plain text format that is used for storing and transporting of data. This is something that you will have in previous days of the series, and this is something you've seen in most of our past projects, previous days of this series, where we built a couple of projects, just a little bit, we mash some things together, and most of the time you have seen JSON in a structured form. That's like a data structure, and in probably about 3 videos back, we have been playing with this on past form of JSON as well. One thing though is that as you're used to both, they work, and I'm pretty sure that you don't fully understand why that's written that way. An example of what I'm going to show you is what we have here. I believe you remember where we get a Notion clone, and we made this together, and we were able to post this. This is a JSON. This is how it looks like. So I'm pretty sure you've been curious, why is there a dot, why is there curly braces, why are there double quotes everywhere. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you like a complete map of everything, how each piece of JSON, how it's explained briefly. And like I said, you don't need to have any programming background required. So to connect the dots, every API that we've been doing since day 26 has been JSON. Every HTTP module, like the one I just showed you, the body, since like day 28 has also been JSON. Every part that we have been working with since day 14, where we started the projects on AI automation, most of it that we map in are also JSON fields as well. JSON is more like a shared language of every API in every layer of this course that I'm teaching. So what I'm just going to do today is just to teach you how that works. We're going to cover a couple of things, and that is going to start from the 6 data types. Then I'm going to explain what nested structures. I'm going to explain what array access is, and I'm also going to show you make.com's way of variable notations, basically how you get mapped JSON part, and also how to write correct JSON bodies as well, like what you see over here on make.com. So and another thing is that I'm going to talk about the 5 errors that I believe can break this, and I'll also show you how to spot them, each of them. So the first thing, I've been explaining what JSON is, right? JSON means that's a JavaScript notation. JSON is a text-based format for representing structured data. And mind you, if you are ever asked outside, JSON is not a programming language. It is not a code. It is like a standardized way of writing data as a text. So any system out there, anywhere can read this. And one thing I need you to know is that every developer out there use this. There's a word I can give JSON, and that is I can say it is language independent. Though JSON was originally taken JavaScript, but almost all major programming languages, Python, Java, C++, and PHP, can easily read and write JSON basically. So from what you have noticed as well is like from all these APIs and what we've been working on, it's a standard format mostly used to make requests and also to get data or to return data, whichever way you put it. So, and I've been explaining all this for a while. Well, another thing I'm going to point out is that before JSON, there was something called XML, and this is how we have XML. This is what I put together here. XML will show you something like lead, what you see and how an XML is like is it has like an angle bracket, and you can see the lead, and you can see every other single detail there. If I want to replace this, I could even give it a structure similar to what we have here. So I could give it something like name should also be in angle bracket, would be but I'll have to start putting a couple of things together. But right after this came out, JSON actually replaced this. So when you use JSON, this is how it looks like in JSON, where you bring your curly bracket and the double quotation to the name. This is what we call the key, and this is the value of the key as well. The difference between these two is that JSON is smaller and it is more readable, and this is something that every language also is able to parse this natively. So when an API returns data, it is almost always in JSON, like what we do have in Notion there. So when an API also wants to add data too, you can also see that it's almost always JSON as well. This is like almost like a generalized format. So I believe if you know this, you can use it anywhere. So we're going to talk about the 6 data types. The first one is what I have here, and that is the string. So before I go on, every JSON document in the world that you need to know uses only these 6 things I'm going to explain to you, these 6 data types. So the first one, like I said here, is the string. These are text. But what you notice is that these are text. And what you notice is that these are double quotes. That's what you see here is Amaka Obi, right? You see Obi, you see Amaka at businessco.ng, and you also see auth. You get. So what you notice here is that there are double quotes, and they are always in double quotes. That is what you see. That is how you see strings. You cannot use single quotes in strings because single quotes are not valid. They are not valid. They are not valid JSON. If you have something instead like this, like where you use this or you use this, you see what's going on. So, but when you have this in place and you have this, you see even the color changed. So that is like that is just showing you that what it is not a valid JSON. I mean, we basically call it invalid. The second one I'm going to introduce you is the numbers. These numbers, unlike this string, don't have quotes because numbers are integers. They are decimals. Like this is a decimal, right? You do remember what that is. This is a decimal. They are integers like this. They are also what in negative form like this -7, and also sometimes in the scientific form as well. That is what we have as 5, 6, or probably 1.5 E1 or 10 or something. So this is the difference between what a string and a number. A number doesn't have quotes, while strings have double quotes. The third one I'm going to show you now is the boolean. These booleans have no quotes as well, and they are only written in low case. So what you notice here, I put true and false. I did not put something like a capital T without having a capital T. No, I'm not using that. I'm not using that, and I'm not using something like I believe this. No, I'm not using this as well. So all I use is just what this, and the same thing for false as well. So it must be in lower cases and should not have what any quotes as well. Another thing is the null. Now this null, it basically represents absence. So null, when you use this when a field has no value, more like it's on this null. An example of where I can call on to this is I remember multiple times over, I had to tell you guys that whenever we want to map some things, let me use it for example now. I remember having to Notion. There are multiple times I mentioned this where I said, you guys should, let's assume you want to update a data source item now, right? We have it connected already, and okay, so I have my camera here, so it's obstructing a couple of things. Okay, I've dragged it now, and nope, what I wanted to do was check here and use search, then we query and lead. I want to connect to our database and just show you what I've been trying to talk about when it comes to null. So you could in these fields use what for like WhatsApp, you could use, but there is a way I've actually been explaining to you guys that you could just use this instead, empty. To me, this actually really feels the same way, because it's also what it returns nothing. It returns nothing when you want to update this database. It returns nothing. The fifth one also, the object. Now what you see, the big difference between this is that an object is like having every single thing in curly braces. What you notice all this while is that we have all this inside an object. You find anything here that you see here inside an object. An object is what? When you have this and this covering it, and you have these two curly braces calling it. So, but what another thing you also notice in an object is that it has a key and it also has a value. What a key is, this is a key. Anything in the first instance, right? Separated by this double quote. When you see this in double quotes, and you have this here as well, and you have this, like each one you have here separated by this, and it's more like having a value. There's a way we can actually see this. This is a very good example as well. This is a very good example. There are many times we did something similar. This is almost like the same thing, where you have what? You have Notion. This is the key, and you have the value. You know what? Let me run this, and when I run this, I'm going to run it without without passing the response. So let's remove this real quick and show you how that works. And I run this module alone. So when you see this now, I am not so wow, okay, it looks like this. And when you see this, let's go right into it. The headers, yes, I'll show you the headers instead. We pass the headers though. This. I'm actually looking for the okay. Well, status code. If you do remember what a status code is, this 200 success, and this 200 means success. It went in okay. I'm trying to look for that. I believe I can still find it there though. That's the Notion. I'm actually looking for the Notion version. Guess what? I forgot. I actually forgot. I was looking for it in output rather than input, right? This is it, Notion version. Okay, you can see it. This is the name, this is the value. I wish, because it's showing us in a structured format now. If it was showing us without a structured format, you would have seen it right beside each other. Like this, the same way you're having like name and Notion version. You would have seen Notion version, and you would have seen this value here right beside it. That was actually what I wanted to show you guys. But you guys can also see, I actually ran this just now, and I'm sure it's saved on Notion. Let's quickly head into Notion and cancel this up, and let's go in. So when we check this was the ones we ran before. Let's see if we could update this real quick. Loading. You can see this now, Amaka, and I had this, and I did not include all this, so you are not going to see there. And I have this as well. So you guys understand that this is actually what we are using. That is what we're using as well. All this while we run most of the modules we have been seeing. Okay, let's go back. The next thing you notice, this is our data type, is an array. So an array basically is an ordered list of what you will notice here. They are ordered. They are ordered. I mentioned here is that you can see we have the first, second, and third, and it keeps going like that. So it keeps going like that. However, in this array, I do remember we're being taught that okay, that was a mistake. Then at an array is indexing from 0. What I mean is that when you get a response, probably let's say you get a response from this now, and it's giving us a long there's no way I can use this as an explanation now, but what is going to show us when you get a response is that if you have something like this, it will tell us this is actually what index 0. This is starting from 1. Another one is rather than, all you notice is that you are seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The index that an array is seeing is, this is 0, not the value itself. The key number, that is what, like this is a key, right? This is a key, this is a value. So the number this is what? This is 0, and this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, something like that. So that's how this is. So but this time around it works like this way. So an array is a list, is an ordered list of values. This time around is of values. It is separated mostly by a comma. So you can see this, we have this, and we have a comma, we have a comma, we have this. We don't have a comma right after. And I'm going to show you, and I'm going to explain to you rather. So you can see this as well. Now one thing also that you need to know is that you could even add an object inside an array, and that's what you can see here. An example is what you can see. Whenever we have a curly brace, right, based on what I explained to you here. So you can see we have name and a marker, and we have what? A comma right after the first curly bracket. Then we have a new curly bracket. We have name. This is an array as well, because it's also a list. So this is probably a list of what? Students, or a list of people. This is a list of numbers, and this is a list of temperature. And I mean, that is how this works. So this is an array, and this is how it works. For every single thing I just explained to you now, in summary, is these are the 6 types, and I think what you need to remember all this, because there's a way I used to remember this, and the way I did it back in school as well was, I would say strings need quotes, numbers don't, booleans lowercase, null means nothing, objects are wrapped in coily, and arrays are in square. I mean, you can see it very clear. So once again, strings quotes, numbers don't, booleans are lower cases, null means nothing, objects are wrapped in coily, while arrays are wrapped in squares. I mean, you can actually turn that to a song. So the next thing I'm going to explain here now is just to break down more on the objects and arrays. So a real JSON object that I'm going to use what I brought out here from Anthropic API when you use Claude itself. So this is the kind of response you get, and the response you get will give you this JSON message here, which says ID, and you see the person's ID, or probably the access ID that you used to have this. You see a type and message. When you see all of this, you see a real example of different data types. So what this is basically explaining actually is, this is a nested object. What I mean is that this is an object that you can find an object inside another coily right above. So you can see an object inside another. It's like a coily. When I say bracket, you can call it coily braces inside coily braces. So I mean, I call it brackets and braces. So basically what you see here, you see this is right inside another coily braces right above it, which is this we have here, which is this and this as well. So that is an example of a nested object. And to break it down is what I have here, where I show you that the ID that you see here, which is this, is a string, and the type also that we see, obviously you can see it is also in a double quote. It's also a string. The row that you see here is also a string, because I mean, you can see this, you can see the response is giving us the content also, but this time around this content is not a string. You can see the square brackets basically. And the content it also contains object as well. It also contains an object. You can see the coily braces there as well. So, and the next one we see is, we see the model with a string as well. We see the stop underscore reason, it's also a string. Now when we look at these ones here, we see usage this time around is a nested object, because what you can see here, this is the coily braces. So this is now the coily braces that we've been talking about inside another coily, right? So when we look at the whole API, to get the text that it says auth, the AI has to classify it. It will have to first navigate at it, and the content is, that's the array that is going to have content 0. Content 0 is the first thing there, and the first thing there that you get to find is auth, right? Remember when I told you, when I told you right here, what is content 0? That's index 0. I basically mean the same thing. This is index 0, this is index 1, which is 1, index 2. So you need to know what that, I mean, it's basically found in an array, right? And that is what we can find here as well. Inside the content, we can see it's currently in an array. So you have to start counting it from 0. So content 0 is what we picked out from what we had on top right there. What we have on top right here is content 0. So it also works the same way on make.com. I believe if you can understand this part, this directly mirrors the JSON structure that you can find anywhere else. And if you can follow what this thing is basically, it's following the nesting, and the part basically writes itself from here on. So the next thing I just get to explain to you is the notion response that you get when you work with something like this. Or I might as well just show you what we have here. But this time around, let's make a little bit of changes, and that is, let's change the names. It's still the same database. I mean, we're still heading the same place right here, right? So, but we're going to change the name. I will change the name to, what am I familiar with as well? We could use the name Cynthia, or use the name Eniola. These are actually people I know, and okay, let's use Cynthia. I hope I'm correct. My God. Okay, you know what? Sorry, I'll have to use this. I don't want to write the wrong thing there. So let's use and she's also up. So we're going to save this, and we're going to pass the response this time around. Why I did not pass the response, because I wanted it to return and show us the whole thing you saw there. That is, it's basically returning. It's not returning in a structured format. That was what basically happened just now. So, but now it's going to return in a structured format, and you can run this module. Now, what we see here this time around, this data, you can see it came back in a structured format. It looks pleasant to see now, right? So let's look at the properties. I can see this as well. This is lit. We did not actually do all this. So the only thing we did was the name, and that is what you can see here. The name, you can see Eniola, right? Let's see if it actually updated here, which we should probably have done that. I need to reload this page again. So we have that in as well. Okay, so from what we can see here, basically we can see the entire JSON format, but this time around we're seeing it in a structured. You can see it in a structured format. If I had used the previous one, you'd have seen it, and it should just look, a bit crazy. Because of that, it looks like that because I have a couple of things in this database. If it was just a simple database where I added the name, email, and the liter, it would have looked easier. I mean, it's actually easy, but because I have a couple of things, that's why it looked like it was confusing or something. So to get all of this, you have to use the right property. That is the thing. So based on the property name, you get to know what we are mapping this to. An example of what I'm saying is that we're mapping this name, the name that we have there, that's alright. We're mapping this to the property name that says like a text, and that is a string. So, but that is a string. However, one thing you notice here is that it says what? It says an array here. Title says array here. Why did it say an array? The thing is that Notion itself, particularly to Notion, uses an array for rich text. So that is why we get to see it that way. It's an array that Notion uses to wrap a rich text. That is why we see it as an array. But in real sense, it's actually a string. So it's a plain text, so that means it's a string, right? So anyway, every single thing I'm just showing you are things that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. And we've written this variable, written every single thing you see here in day 28. But I believe that now you understand why every single part is here like this. You understand that this property, or the properties you see here, has to go to the properties you see there. An example is, you see the name is going to the name field, or like the title this time around. When it comes to that title, that name itself is because what we have here, to make you understand why this is still an array and why I'm calling it an array, because on Notion stores this title text as well as an array. That is the default. This is the title text. This is the title by default. This comes with Notion. So that is what Notion does, and that is why you can see it that way. But if you remove a part and you don't format it in the right way, if you don't use the right data type, honestly you are going to notice that whatever you have is actually going to break, and it's going to give you something like an undefined, or to give an error. If I make a mistake anywhere here now, this is going to give us an error. So you just use that to map every single thing that you see there. So this is a database, the parent, the properties that you see here. These are the names and the title, the email. Yeah, that is how that works. That's how that works basically. So the next thing I'm going to have to explain real quick now is the 5 JSON errors. Let's explain this real quick. This is the 5 JSON errors. Yeah, we are here. So the 5 errors that you see, these are the 5 I also see. And the first error you get to see is what? A single quote. Now many people might forget, probably you forget that a string is actually supposed to have double quotes rather than single quotes. So if you use single quotes in this place, in what we have here in the project, it's going to break. It's going to show an invalid. But the valid one is what? Like the Amaka can have double quotes and Amaka is right in between. And I mean, in this case, you can see what we have here. The objects that we have here, where we have the double quotes with the name on the key value on the key side. We have the name, and on the value of that we also have what? We have the name itself, the value of the name, which is Amaka. So the error that we see most of the time is trailing commas. Now what happens here is that I was saying I was going to bring this back. If what you had done for trailing comma was that this is an object, the entire thing is an object. So what you notice is that you have your A also in double quotes. This one, please remember, this is a number. This is not a string. This is a number. So it's an integer, right? That's why we don't add any. That's why we're not adding any double quotes to it. This as well is the key for this, and this is the value 2, also a number. Now, if what you had done, because you have to add a comma here, because we say you had a comma, but you now decide to add another comma here without adding any other thing. If what you have done was probably had something like this, and you have a C, and you have a, okay, I believe I have this done now, and you have this right there, sorry, oh my god, what the hell. So, and you have this, it is what? It is okay. But if what you have again, comma is meant to be right in between two keys and values. It's meant to be right in between, but not meant outside. You are not meant to see a comma right outside. Another thing now is unquoted key. One thing you need to know is that, once again, this is a key, this is a value. If you decide not to quote this, it is wrong, it's invalid, and you only quote probably the value because you think the value is the string. No, you have to quote both, the key and the value. That's what we have here. The third one is a boolean. Now what we see here, this is the key, this is the value again. If you remember what a boolean is, a boolean doesn't have double strings, and a boolean is not meant to have anything in upper class. Everything is meant to be in lower class. That is TRUE, or probably if it is the force, that is FALSE. So that is how it's meant to look like. Everything in lower cases. So the other one now is the missing comma. In this case, I told you about the trailing comma. The trailing comma is you adding an extra comma when it's not actually needed, because it's not in between two. It's not in between a key and a value with another key and a value. So that is one. Another one is if you now forget to even add a comma in the first place. So that is where you need to add a comma like this right in between, because you are basically stating that these are two different things entirely, though they are inside an object. These are two different things entirely. So that is it for all the errors. And what all these are is just you adding an error between. This is basically you adding a comma between two properties. So what I've been saying, what is now is that you have a key and a value. It is called a property, right? And that is what you can see here. For example, this is a key and this is the value you find inside. this is a property. That's the property name and the property value. That is what we've been saying all this while. Let me see if we have like one of the responses that we do have here now. For example, you can see that what we have here says properties, and this property, this is a key, and that's the value. It's as simple as that. This is also what can also be considered as a property. We have the key, and this is the value. So that is how this works. And just know that next time you use make.com's HTTP module and it gives you a body error, if it gives you any error, one thing I want you to do is just check one of these things before you do anything else. An example of it giving us an error now, let's make an error real quick, and let's use this by removing this and this. Let's remove this. Yeah, remember what I said. This is an array. You can see this. That is how it is for title. That's like the default way it looks like for title. For Notion, this is how they do it. This is an array. You can see, right? It's closing in to the objects that we do have here, and we're basically having a nested object. A nested object is, remember, coily braces inside coily braces. This is a coily braces. This is an open and a closed coily braces inside another closed and open coily braces. Everything we did here is just based on the rules that we have, the data types, the 6 data types, every single thing that we have about that. That is what we have here. So we intentionally created an error, right? That's this and this. We're supposed to have what? Double quotes. So let's see if this is going to. Oh, okay. Should I change the value? Let's change the value a bit. Let's change the name. Let's change the name now to Ben, and let's say Ben here as well. You guys will not be mad at me for using your names. Okay, I think I do have this already. Let's save and let's run this. And we encountered an error. That's what I've been saying all this while. What does it say? Make.com makes it easier for us to explain the error and tell us that our Ben at. So please put, I wanted to say place, they're not telling us to place. I mean, it's your choice now. Put quotes around the email value in the body content field. I mean, I love what make.com actually did, because like I said, we never had this before. You have to like break it down by yourself. So this time around, we know that this error we encountered is based on one of the problems. Our string doesn't have double quotes. So let's do it back there. I want to ensure Ben lands in a database. So yeah, Ben is in. It's as simple as that, guys. It's as simple as that, guys. So I believe we have a good understanding about JSON now. And to give you a summary, JSON has 6 data types. This 6 is what you use in everything, every API, every webhook payload, every HTTP body is built only on these 6. So once you can also read the nested JSON that we do have, and you go a little bit deeper, talk about the brackets for the arrays. You talk about the coily braces also for objects as well, which is where we get the nested JSON. You can navigate around any API response. One thing you need to see is that this is a very simple, they are all in plain text, plain English text, right? So I mean, you can see it obviously. If you can understand this 6 data type, I believe that you can write a valid JSON that is with double quotes, no trailing commas, having just all these things in place and all these rules, which are not even crazy. You can build any HTTP request body like what I did here, where I built this hop. You can do anything like this. Just ensure that whatever you are doing, you need to close the coily braces back in. That is the thing. Just open the parent, this, what? Close it. Ensure you close. This is the open, and this is the close, and this is the open. This is the close right down here. Let's do for this open. Okay, this is the open, right? And this is the close. Wow, that's crazy. That's actually crazy. Anyway, yeah, I mean, this is how this works. Tomorrow is the 32, and we're going to be building the real things, using every single thing that we've been talking about in layer 3. We're going to be building everything. And if you do need this, resource guide, everything, I probably add this into the description, or probably you see this is probably a post. You are going to get this at the end of the post. And yeah, this is all about the full JSON reference, every type and every error you get in. So if you have any questions, drop it in the comments below. And, I might have to, probably break it down and explain, and I might even go as far as even recording a video for you on it. So yeah, look forward to talking to you guys, and see you tomorrow. Peace.